Good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Shweta. She's Ginny, and we are from Guinea's Planet. And we are very lucky to have Chef Michael Swamy with us today. Chef Michael Swamy, let me say two things about him. One is that he wears many hats. Right now, you can't see him with a hat, but he does wear many hats. So he's a chef and he takes photograph, and he's a wildlife photographer as well. He is the expert on food plating, and today we are here to take many tips from him. So welcome, Chef Michael. How are you?
I'm fine, and how are you doing?
Great. So I'm so grateful that we could finally do this. I know many technological problems came in, but yeah, we are here now. Uh, Today's conversation, because on Guinea's Planet we always do come around talking about food, but today's is special. It's especially about how do you present food, right? And that's an art in itself. So, how would you like to introduce the topic to people?
It's about uh, when we see Indian food these days, everything is just like dumped on a plate. Especially when you go out to restaurants or to dhabas, uh, a lot of people are now getting involved with how do I present my food. I've got guests coming over. How do I serve my food? Uh, the old style garnishes of carved vegetables, carved fruits, all that has disappeared. There's a whole new change has come about with plating food and serving food, and a lot of people are interested in that these days. We're seeing a lot of people now posting on Instagram, posting on Facebook. They're posting their daily lives. So the thing has come about like, how do I make my pictures more interesting? How do I make my food more interesting, more appealing, more appetizing? So there are a lot of factors that go into this. So that's what I'm going to be talking about.
Right. So I see that you've touched different points. So one is about people who eat, they want to take a good photograph of the food that they are eating. So obviously they have to follow some rules, and which is something that we're going to hear from you today. And the other part is that I know that when we go out and eat, or when we are looking at menu and look at photographs, the I mean sometimes the photographs decide what we eat. So I do know that what you're saying is very important.
Yeah, and nowadays, with everyone ordering from outside, we are now looking more at the photographs that are on the screen, um, whether Swiggy or whatever they are, or a restaurant menu that's online. We're looking at the photographs. And, like when I was looking at little Ginny, there was this couple of these people who travel the planet and they carry this little doll with them everywhere. And the doll is there in every photograph, along with the food or with the scenery and things like that. And it's amazing how people are uh, connecting dots kind of things when they're traveling, be it food or travel.
Great, great. So, looking forward to this. Let's move on. What would you like to share first?
So first, I'm going to share a little bit about my travels, which I've traveled quite a bit across the country, and especially when you're en route, you're always stopping at a dhaba or you're stopping at a roadside vendor to eat your food. And everywhere you go, you're always encountering bhajiyas of some kind, or you're encountering samosas of some kind, well, or the infamous Maggi noodles, and the variety is missing. Like if you're traveling in Europe, especially, even on the highways, you'll see these little kiosks selling the local speciality. And if for some reason, our local specialities always center around deep fried foods, which is not bad. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but that change needs to be brought about. And when we were creating the Bharat Petroleum dhabas all along the highways, uh, I started teaching the village guys who were cooking. I started teaching them about plating, even how a little bit of coriander, a little bit of chilies, they brighten up a plate. Instead of giving us, those sliced lemons, how do you cut a lemon properly and put it onto a plate? It's these little things that count in the long run. Uh, you get a lot of fresh vegetables in the fields. You get a lot of edible flowers in the fields, corn flowers, mustard flowers. All of these brighten up a plate. And in a small place like a little village, you can do so much. So how do we do it at home? Uh, so I'm going to take you through a slideshow now. Could we have the first slide, please? So food is all about communicating. Food tells us a story. It's not just about putting food on a plate, serving it to your guest, and it has to look presentable. It- like now, if I talk about a samosa tells me a story. It tells me a story of a culture where, in the olden days, when people had to from one place to another, long distances, how do I keep my food fresh? How do I keep my food staying cooked for a long period of time? So they had to cook it, envelop it into a piece of pastry so that there were no refrigerators in those days. So your food had to stay kind of warm within that for a couple of hours. So that's why most of our foods were fried in those days. Um, so if you see, how does food connect with people or connecting people through food? That's what plating is all about. Um, so when I see a large buffet that is plated well, a large buffet is actually plated well for a large gathering of people, not for one or two people. So when the first person has taken a bite of the food, the rest of the food still has to look good. So how do I plate it? How do I make it look good? Today we are in a world of social media and making food Instagrammable. So if you look at that small basket of chilies, it's an old, torn, broken basket of chilies. But automatically your eye goes to it. If it was a brand new looking basket, I think you would have just flipped through the to the next slide. But here, no, don't go back, please. So here, a viewer is going to ask me, why did you use a broken basket? The viewer is going to ask me, why are the chilies mixed together? The viewer is going to then ask me, why are there so many colors in the basket? If I'd kept just one kind of chili in a very brand new basket, you would have said, next picture, please. So that's how food tells you a story. Food communicates to you. Uh, we have simple dishes like your chaat, a bhel puri, pani puri, dahi batata puri. But it tells you about the culture of the or the background that comes with the dish. So, like I said, food tells you a story. It is not you telling the story about the food. So, when I put a plate of food in front of my guest, whether it's a foreigner or it's somebody who's not local, you are speaking, this is my culture through the food that I'm serving you. And that is how we look at, even with food photography. If I'm shooting say, a North Indian dish, I wouldn't use crockery and cutlery from South India for it. Because if I'm shooting a North Indian dish, it has to be in crockery or cutlery from North India. Then it tells me the culture from where that dish came from. It tells me a lot of history before I even start plating my food. Now, if I have we were in a restaurant the other day and we served, because it was a large gathering, we served a group of South Indians the usual food where all our food was plated. At the resort, everything is plated. And the guest said, why don't you serve it to us? You know, the South Indian, you have 4 or 5 katoris with a handle on top. Now, that is not the culture of our restaurant to serve food like that. But the guest is telling us to serve food like that. Why? Because they're used to that kind of service. They're used to that kind of culture. So when you give them fine dining food, they're not used to it. Now, you can change it when you're at home, but you can't do it in a hotel or restaurant for simple reason that your image comes down. Your image to another guest will come down. So again, when you're plating food, you have to see the nuances of your guest. Uh, are they acceptable to the change or are they not acceptable to the change? So, like I said before, food must tell you a story of, okay, you have to create a good image. When I'm plating my food or I'm setting a table, it has to be reliable. So, like I said, I can't serve a North Indian dish in a South Indian crockery. Then it doesn't become reliable. It doesn't become relatable. You have to understand the food that you're serving before you can even start plating the dish. The next one. So, uh, we've all learned art in school. We've learned how to be creative in school. And when you look, I think it's sad that after the eighth standard that they'd stop teaching you art in school. You know, arts and crafts, I think, has to continue for the rest of your life because it's such a part of our everyday life that you're looking at art in in every field, every like if I look at a product that comes from say Europe, for example, the finishing of that product is so excellent. But when I look at some of the products from India, the finishing is bad. And why is that bad? That is bad because we've stopped appreciating art. When you look at the art and culture of, say, 400 years ago, those beautiful temples, the beautiful monuments, nobody's making those anymore these days. We are just building concrete blocks all around us. We've forgotten the elements of composition, and the same elements of composition are what you to put onto a plate. It has to be composed well. You have to look, it has to be pleasing to the eye at the end of the day. The next slide, please. Now, at the end of the day, once the composition is done, that you're ready, it all has to come together as one unified thing on your plate. It has to feel like it belongs together. I cannot put like a dokla on the plate and then put maybe a South Indian poha on the same plate. It doesn't go together. The marriage doesn't happen. So you have to look at these elements before you start plating. There has to be some kind of unity onto the plate. At the same time, when I'm photographing food, there has to be balance. You know, like if you look at the window at the back of the glass to the entire composition, there's a certain balance to it. You don't, you're looking at the window at the back, but at the same time, you're looking at the glass. You're not looking at just the glass without looking at anything else. You're looking at everything as a composite whole. It gives you that sense of feeling of calmness to it. That's how we plate food as well as we photograph food. The next one, please. Now, when you talk about movement on a plate, how you arrange the food, your eye goes to the onions at the back, your eyes go to the sambar. But at the end of the day, your eyes ultimately comes to the uttapams on the plate. Why? Because there's a sense of movement to the whole photograph. The onions are slightly out of focus. The sambar is not in your face, kind of. But what is in your face is actually the uttapams. So you're leading the guest to look around the table, and then his eye comes to the uttapams. Next one. Music. We all love music. We all love music for a reason. Because it gives us joy, it gives us happiness. And what is it that gives us joy? It's the rhythm that happens in music. And the rhythm is the same thing that happens on a plate. When you're cooking, we like to sing when we are cooking. We like to listen to music when we are cooking. And it's the same thing, it's rhythm on a plate. It's not a mess on a plate. So if you look at this photograph, there's a certain flow. It looks like a V shape, right? It looks like a V shape because there's a certain sense of direction, there's a certain sense of design, there's a certain sense of rhythm to it. So when you're plating food, whether it's for a photograph or even to go in front of a guest, there has to be rhythm on the plate. Okay. that leads your eye to it. Now we come to patterns. Uh, if you look at this, there are 3 to 4 different patterns over here. You've got a very rectangular frame. You've got the circular pan. You've got the long, thin sticks of asparagus. You've got the tiny round dots of the red chilies. You've got the handle of the pan. So you've got so many different patterns happening in the same frame. And that's like an artist creating something. And that's how you create patterns. Well, lines, shapes, colors, all this helps you in taking a good photograph, as well as presenting food to a guest. Okay? It's not like a hodgepodge in the pan. Something else you have to look at when you're plating food is proportions. The size of the portions vary. If there was more sambar than the dosas on the plate, it would become a dish of sambar. But here the dish is about the dosas. So the dosas are actually bigger than the sambar and the chilies combined, because that's the focus of it. So like I said, if it was a chili ad, I'd probably have this sambar and the dosas at the back and the chili powder in the front. So that's how composition and proportions play a vital role in what am I showing to the viewer. Okay, so like I said earlier, if I wanted it to be about the sambar would have been bigger than the other 2 elements. If I wanted it to be just chili powder, the chili powder would have been bigger than the other 2 elements. So what is the focus on the plate? What are you focusing on? And that's how you plate food. Next one. Again, what is the most important thing that your eye is falling on? Is it falling on the plate? Is it falling on that paper cup at the back? Is it falling on the rosemary, or is it falling on the potatoes? So this was an ad for a potato chip company. And we wanted all the other elements, but the focus was the main subject. The focus was the potato chips. And that's how in a photograph, we create the focus for a viewer to want that. Why do you want a McDonald's burger? You want a McDonald's burger because the burger patty looks 3 times bigger than what it actually is in real life. You look at a McDonald's ad, those photographs look absolutely tempting, but when you actually get the burger, you say, what is this? So their focus is giving you this luscious dream of a big burger, when in reality you're not going to get that big dream burger. Contrasts on a plate. So we've got contrast from the red to the yellow to the white to the green in this photograph. Sadly, with Indian food, everything looks brown. Everything looks brown or yellow. So how do I bring about that contrast? We'll see it in the next slides. But how do I bring contrast? I bring it using a lot of edible flowers. I use different colored crockery. We serve our brown food in a brown thali using a brown spoon, especially when you go to an Indian restaurant also. Your thali is that copper or the brass. Your food is brown. Your cutlery is brown. How will you enjoy your food? It may taste beautiful, but it doesn't tell you a story, and it definitely doesn't look appetizing. So how do I make Indian food look good? Can I go next slide, please? You have to learn plating techniques. And plating techniques is something that requires a lot of practice. It's not something that comes from day one or day two. It requires a very steady hand. It requires a very artistic eye. And that's why I always tell a lot of my chefs You need to go to art galleries. You need to look at art. You need to look at painters' works. You need to listen to music. Because at the end of the day, that is what you're going to put on the plate. Uh, a lot of our chefs come from the villages. They don't have an artistic eye. We have to train them to have an artistic eye. And it's very important to have an artistic eye. And so there are different elements to plating. One is called stacking. Stacking is when you pile things one on top of the other. So these are malpuas stacked one on top of the other with peaches. I created this dish called a peach malpua for a cookbook with some fennel seeds. But it's a very modern looking plate with a very antique fork. So what does the antique fork tell me? It tells me that the dish is old. It tells me that the dish is a bit of old and bit of modern. The crockery and the cutlery is also talking to me. The cutlery is telling me one story. The crockery is telling me another story. And this is one style of which is called stacking, okay, where you place one thing on top of the other. Again, minimalistic kind of plating. Minimalistic is where I just have one or two elements on the plate, maybe maximum three. So I just have the fish tikka, the onions, and the lemons. That's it. Okay. But this plate is also telling me a story. The kebab sticks at the back is telling me a story. That hint of fire is telling me that it's come out of the tandoor and not an oven. All these elements are telling me stories. And that's how you look at a photograph. That's how you look at taking a photograph, where your images or your food is telling you a story, or you are telling a story. Uh, Messy. So, bel puri or pani puri or like ragda patties, all of these have different elements onto a plate. But at the same time, it doesn't look messy. Okay. But if you look at some people, the way they do it, I wouldn't want to eat it. It just looks like a mess on the plate. So again, how do you make messy look good? Is something that you have to learn over time. Next. So one-sided plating is where everything is to one side of the plate. It doesn't come across onto the whole plate. This is a very modernistic approach to plating these days, which is happening more and more often as we go out to eat. The next slide. So again, streaks. So here we use a lot of palette knives, we use the brushes, we use a lot of food like squid ink, or you use beetroot puree uh, to add color to the plate, to add streaks to the plate. And how do we do it? So you learn these techniques from artists. You don't. All these techniques are not chef-driven techniques. They're artist-driven techniques. How, if you look at the background, go back, please. Yeah. So if you look at the background to the foreground, it's all about how do I make the food stand out. So it's a white plate, dark background, all of that, but the food stands out. Next slide, please. So again, colors. This is a very Indian salad on the left hand side, but I've added dices of tomatoes. I've added some dried bell peppers. I've added some green leaves, green lettuce to it to bring out, if it were an upma, for example, how do I make it appetizing? How do I make it presentable? So again, very art driven techniques to plating. Next, please. Now again, with plating is a topic which I love to talk about. I mean, I can keep on talking for a long while. Is how do I use crockery? How do I make my so I'm always buying crockery. I'm buying crockery whenever I'm traveling. I'll buy a piece of crockery from an antique shop or something like that. And I've got these one piece, two pieces at home, And why is it? It's because I'm always playing around with my food. I don't have, so if I'm shooting food, I've got this whole cupboard full of crockery, different kinds of pieces of crockery, different shapes, sizes. Some are old, some are new, the glassware. That's how you make your food interesting. That's how you make your plating interesting. Next, please. With photography, also, is all about selecting a proper background, that your background doesn't overpower the food, you know. So, what is there at the back of your dish or in front of your dish? You're looking at it from an artist's perspective, where all my elements are in place and nothing is out of place. The next one. So, like I said, what is behind, what is in front, all of these things play a very important role in making your food beautiful. Like we've got a simple bowl of salad to some Indian sweets to some very Indian lamb chops. Lamb chops are all brown. So I added some orange, I added some mint to it, made the plate look beautiful. Okay. Next, please. Yeah, and you know, so I think we come to the end of the session where we are talking about uh, plating. And so, whenever you're entertaining, sorry.
Yeah, so I just because while I was looking at the slide and doing the admin work at that point of time, I was looking at the photos, and I went back to the conversation that you had in your photography workshop, that how story is important, and of course your love for old crockery. Because I noticed in that as well. But overall, this conversation tells me like chefs have huge responsibility. Like they have to be artists and they have to know about food. It's like a lot of own capacity building that you have to continuously do.
Yes, you're an artist, you're a manager, you're a confidant to your staff. It's like a small little world in a kitchen,
Hmm.
and you're, and like your chefs look up to you if you start training them well, if you start teaching them well. They look up to you, and then they start emulating you. So even when they leave your establishment to go elsewhere, they kind of take these with them. So in actuality, you're actually spreading a legacy, you're spreading knowledge, so that even if they're going somewhere else, they're taking that knowledge to a new place. They're, so sometimes I've been to a restaurant, I've seen, oh, that's my style of plating. And then I'll ask who the chef is. And sure enough, one of them has worked with me before. Or I'll post on Facebook and they'll say, oh, chef, you're in the restaurant, I'm coming out to see you. Things like that. And so you see your work um, growing. And I think there are a few brilliant chefs in the country who are very artistic. And I love seeing their work. I like seeing their sh- their uh, their style of work, and it gives a whole new perspective to the way Indian food has changed over the years. I call it Frenchifying Indian food because I use a lot of French plating techniques to my Indian food. Uh, so that's it. You know.
Right. And the other thing that I felt when I was listening to all those tips was that although you were largely focusing on food and tips related to photography of food, but I was only thinking, okay, how do we use it to take photographs of Guinea? Because when we have to take her photograph for our products, all those everything was making sense to me. I was like, yes, yes, that's right, that's right. We can do this for our own products as well, and we're going to try it very soon now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, before we close this conversation, I mean, although you already given like a lot of tips already, but is there anything else that you want to leave the audience with when it
Uh,
comes to either photography or food plating?
the what I say is earlier we kept a lot of props around the food, and what I tell people nowadays is to are we there or have we? Huh? So what I tell people nowadays is to keep it simple, keep it neat, keep it clean. Uh, Choose the right ingredients for your food. We buy a lot of things from the supermarket without checking the source. Um, know where you're buying your ingredients from. That makes a great deal to your health and nutrition and what you're putting on the plate. Half the time, we don't even know where the vegetables are coming. They might have been grown by the railway tracks, and you're still buying them. Is that healthy? You know, you would rather buy your vegetables from a proper farm where they've been ethically grown, things like that. Um, that makes a difference when you're putting things onto your plate. Right now, I'm working with a brand where we are making very ethically grown chicken or um, no additives in the chicken or in the fish that you're getting. We're looking at the source. We're looking at from where is it coming from, and then sending it out to the guests. Sure, it is a few rupees extra, but it's worth it that somebody is taking the trouble for you. You know, we Indians love to bargain. I mean, we love to bargain for something cheaper, but sometimes that cheaper one may be injurious to your health. You know, because health has no out. You can put a value to health because good health is priceless.
Right,
And
right. And so one part is about ourselves, one part is about people and planet. So what you just said about is it ethically made, is it ethically grown? A lot of it is about responsible business as well. I mean,
yes,
same applies to us. I mean, where we source Guinea from, who makes it, who makes our products, all those things,
absolutely.
and same going on with you as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, Guinea stands for all the youngsters of today. You know,
Hmm.
she's there as a symbol for all the young kids. And you want to feed your young kids something healthy, something beautiful on the plate, something creative, you know.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of the kids today emulating the grown-ups. They love to be in the kitchen, they love to plate food well, and we should encourage them and push them to create beauty. You know, end of the day.
Right. Great. Thank you so much, Chef Michael, for coming in. Best wishes for all that you do, and we hope you'll come to visit our planet sometime in future as well. Yeah.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Take care.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
So that was Chef Michael. I'm sure you've taken away a lot of tips from today. We keep holding these collaborative workshops, and you'll also see what's coming up this weekend or in March. We have a series of other conversations and workshops coming up. Do keep track of what we do. Guinea's Planet nurtures empathy, respect for diversity through workshops, dolls, puppets, and storybooks. Meet me, Ginny, and Guinea Puppet this Saturday in the workshop with Rajeshi. See you all very soon. Bye bye.